Folks, you are more than welcome back to another episode of the Friday Flows. Episode 46. We are stacking them up every week. It's an interesting episode for you today, folks, and one I'm really excited about. I'm very lucky to have Matt Muller on the show today, and what Matt's going to be discussing with us, and just to kind of lay a little bit of a foundation for the discussion, as you can see in the title, like we're going to be talking through some of the challenges that fintech teams have and where Tines might fit into that, but we're very lucky to have Matt join us last month as our field CISO at Tynes. And for anyone that isn't aware of his background, spent 5 years as the director of security operations at Coinbase and also spent time after that at Material Security as the product lead for their phishing product, which again has led to him joining us here at Tynes and someone I'm really interested to get into it with when it comes to how he leveraged Tines, because ultimately one of the early adopters and one of the early teams to adopt Tines at a very young stage in our development as a company. So Matt, how are we doing? Thanks a million for joining us.
It's fantastic to be here. I can't believe this is what you said, episode 46.
I know.
I know I've been seeing these pop up every Friday on my LinkedIn, and it's such a fun time to be on the other side of it now.
And this is by far the best setup I've seen someone have when they join the show. So raising the bar, Matt, raising the bar. Um, but Matt, obviously, just as I mentioned there, with the Coinbase thing, I know from someone who at the time, and I know a lot of my friends were in the same circle. It's interesting to get this perspective security wise because I remember back in like 2017, 2018 in the crypto space and things were really starting to get interesting. And I remember setting up my wallet at Coinbase in that year. But if you could take us back and kind of give us the lay of the land in 2018, 2019 for you as a director of SecOps, and I suppose to add some whipped cream on top of that question, like where did Tines pop up and kind of what was the rationale for bringing it in and around that time?
Yeah, so I mean, this was a pretty incredible time of growth for Coinbase. I mean, really for any company. Where you just sort of see like, oh, yesterday this was a team of 10 engineers, and 2 months from now it's a team of 100 engineers, right, with a director and all that sort of stuff. So you just see these exponential growth factors across the entire business. And so for us being in security operations, what we were starting to struggle with was the fact that something that was maybe okay as a manual process, like not our favorite thing, but something that was tolerable as a manual process, just became this insane deluge of toil, like overnight, essentially, right? Like, we were sort of the front lines of supporting the organization as they had security questions, which is totally natural, right? People have questions about security, especially when you're in a high security space like crypto. And this went from, maybe one or two questions a day or what have you to like 20 to 30 questions a day, right? We almost had to staff somebody full time, literally just answering questions, right? And that's only one tiny fraction of all the stuff that we had to deal with. And so, we started looking around at various solutions to help us fix this. We started with maybe just saying, hey, what if we just wrote some scripts, right? Like, what if we just, maybe had a couple AWS Lambdas that helped us out, or like cobbled together a few things here or there. That didn't scale for obvious reasons, right? We had one person on the team who was really good at software engineering, and when he decided to take another job, guess what? Everything he'd built froze exactly in that state, right? And like for us to be able to make changes or like fix it if it broke was a really challenging thing. And so we started looking at various automation platforms that existed. And all of them, kind of for one reason or another, just didn't really feel like they hit the mark, right? Either we would have had to spend too much time in the tool, and I think most importantly, have non-security operations people spend too much time in the tool, which kind of made it a non-starter, right? If like your first experience in an incident is having to log into a new tool that you've never seen before, you're going to have a bad time during that incident.
Sure.
And then the other half was just, hey, all of these tools came with a bunch of pre-built integrations, and to move beyond that required a whole bunch of engineering talent, anyways, right? Engineering talent that we didn't necessarily have and couldn't necessarily dedicate specifically to automation. And so, towards the end of 2019, we were sort of, like running into a little bit of despair, and that's when I got introduced to Owen and TK, the founders of Tines, and saw what they were building and just realized, oh man, like this is it. This is what we've been looking for.
No way. That's really interesting. Like to understand then what happened for you as a team at that stage. So obviously needed something in place that was going to obviously connect your tools, make automation more adoptable across the team, obviously reducing any kind of learning curve for someone new coming in and assisting with that scale. After that, then when you had deployed Tines, what did it solve for you folks as a team, or what did it allow you to aspire to as a goal, I suppose? Like what kind of happened after that deployment kicked off?
Yeah, we realized pretty quickly that we couldn't automate our entire program at once, right? Because we still had to run the team and run the program while we were automating things.
Right.
And so we sort of started taking the approach of saying, hey, let's take a little tiny thing that's maybe either frustrating or really cumbersome and just automate that one little workflow, right? Like nothing fancy, nothing that I would go up on stage and, like say like, I can't believe we automated this thing with Tines, right? It was small. But we started to see all of these little pieces add up. I think one of the things that, because like the tech side of FinTech is, super cool and modern and has all the SaaS technologies and it's in the cloud. But the fin half of FinTech has a bunch of process, right? That's just sort of like inherent in being a regulated company. And so, once we sort of eased off some of the burden of just like overwhelming processes that, or toil or things that were just like, taking up way too much human time, that's when we started to look at, okay, well, what are the parts that today we're just doing a process because policy says we have to do this process, right? And what can we do to automate some of those things?
That's interesting. So to kind of dig into that then a little bit. So once the mundane from a security point of view had been automated off the table, obviously that then allowed you to free the bandwidth up to kind of assess, okay, there's different ways that we could focus on things within the business. So what were the kind of use cases then that you really liked for Tines in that regard once the initial automation goals had been achieved?
Yeah, so there's sort of two halves to this. The first is process that we were just required to do mostly to make sure we were meeting our regulatory obligations. And the other half was just sort of good common sense stuff for any company that handles money. So on the regulatory side, you have to do things like quarterly user access reviews, right? Every single system, you have to review all the people who have access to it, what their roles entail, justify them continuing to have that access, right? This is just sort of like inherently involved in being like a public financial services company. And before Tines, this was something that was like entirely run out of spreadsheets. And I think our GRC team every quarter aged about 5 years, right? Because they're just like wrangling all of this across, and like, what do you do if a person forgets to fill out their access review in a timely manner, right? Like, how do you follow up with them? What do you do if somebody's on leave, right, and can't either do the approvals or can't do their justifications and so on and so forth? So just a really, really heavy manual process. And like, you can't just not do that process, right? Like, you have to do that. But we were able to sort of say, like, okay, how can Tines help make some of this a little bit more efficient in terms of saying, like, how do we like some of the reconciliation and reminder processes and all that sort of stuff, and saying, like, okay, it's not just about like building piles of spreadsheets, right? Like, there's a lot of this that we can eliminate some of the toil from, even if the outcome is still, yes, we still have to do quarterly access reviews.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's interesting. I think from a because of the like the amount of time, right, that you had spent at Coinbase with Tines deployed and how early it was in our, in our development, kind of keen to hear what did you see change in Tines over that 5 year period? Because I've seen, maybe you've seen it as well. I don't know if you've ever seen the Hinchy's beta of what the first beta of what Tines actually looked like years and years and years ago. So I'm kind of keen to understand how things developed for you. You trusted Tines at an early stage. How did things change as a product over time?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things was, we started with Tines basically exclusively for security operations, which meant implicitly that all of the permissions that Tines had and like all the credentials that we loaded in were ones that our team just sort of normally and naturally would have anyways, right? So there wasn't really a whole set of concerns around, oh, like role-based access or all that sort of stuff. We again, there's some nuance to it, but by and large, if we needed to, lock a user out of a system, it's either a human having that permission or it's Tines having that permission, right? So kind of a lateral move there. But other teams within both the security organization as well as outside of it started seeing this really cool platform that we were using to automate a whole bunch of stuff. And initially, I think we had a little bit of concern around saying, like, how do we give people safe access to this platform? Because we started to have time stories that were mission critical for us, right? And we couldn't afford to have somebody accidentally break a story.
Sure.
Um, and so one of the things I've appreciated about Tines over the last, almost 5 years now, is the fact that, from the founders on down, it is such a customer request driven platform. And now seeing it on the other side is really cool, right? With our Slack channel of feature requests that
Yeah.
everyone reviews, like, it's wild to see like Steven, our head of product, like in the Slack channel, like looking at almost every single thing that comes in. So it really does, like it's not just us saying like, oh yeah, we build based on what customers need. It's like, oh, I've now actually seen end to end, both as a customer requesting better role-based access control and receiving it as a customer, like, oh, now I actually see the other side, right? Of like, we're actually really building in response to all of these requests. And so I think the enterprise readiness of Tines has really, really evolved over the past couple of years. And it's something that, again, I think if you're just, landing Tines in your organization, it's something that, okay, like just the SOC team has this, whatever, that's fine. Now we're starting to see Tines really emerge as this like robust enterprise automation platform. It's really, really cool to see.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. I know initially the context for Times was around SOAR, and I think by evolving and solving a lot of the problems that were in that category, as you said, it becomes this enterprise-wide automation tool, and it's a great thing to be a part of. But listen, conscious we're coming up on time. Matt, that was an awesome episode. Thank you for joining us. And obviously, looking forward to many good times ahead here at Tynes. Folks, if you enjoyed that episode, as I always say, please like and repost to your network on LinkedIn and give us a subscribe and a like on YouTube as well. And if there's any specific technologies or any specific use cases that you're interested in seeing on the Friday flows, also let us know in the comments. And as always, thanks a million for watching. Matt, thank you very much, folks. Catch you in the next one.
Thanks so
Cheers.
much, Cam.